Hello and welcome back to It's Too Late to Apologize Book Reviews. I'm Stella, and today I'm doing a tagged video. I was tagged by the Falcon Reads for the mid-year book freakout tag. Now, admittedly, it's a little past mid-year. I'm a little behind on everything this year, it seems, because it's been a gong show so far. So, this was the first tag video that I wanted to catch up on, as the Falcon keeps me as social introvert as I can be on the internet. So, my reading challenge this year has been suffering because I had a bit of a hiatus pushing videos up on my channel because life just got far too busy. Hopefully the rest of the year will go smoothly. I am behind on my book reading challenge. Let me see here. How many books am I up to right now? I've read 19 out of 40 books that I have hoped to read this year. So I am far behind. Will I make my reading challenge this year? Most likely not, but we'll see how the rest of the year pans out. All right, we got 14 questions. Question number 1, the best book so far. Tough to say because I haven't completed my the passenger review or an analysis. I haven't finished writing it. And oftentimes I find that when I'm working on the write-up is when I really start to appreciate the book more so than the first read-through. Especially with McCarthy, I find, is that the first read-through is basically what the hell is going on. And then the second and third reading that I do, or I tend to do when I'm working on the analysis and the review, is where I really start to see some of like the brilliance. Not that I couldn't recognize the brilliance on first read, but where a lot of it starts to come together in a much more complex way than I was able to grasp on the first read through. So I have a feeling that as of right now, the best read of the year so far is The Passenger. Although I will say that Outer Dark was pretty awesome. That was pretty great. I read that last year, but I wrote the review this year, and so I read it a few more times this year. So it's a toss-up right now, but I'll go with The Passenger. Question 2, the best sequel so far. So I don't read a lot of series anymore. I don't know if you could actually consider Stella Maris a sequel. It's sort of not really a sequel at all. So what I'll go with, but right now I'm reading The Lightbringer by Pierce Brown. I'm very early on. I think I'm only like 100 pages into it so far. So far, so good. But this would be the only thing that qualifies as a sequel that I'm reading this year so far. So I'll use that one for that question. Number 3, new release you haven't read but want to. I don't really read new books other than Pierce Brown, Lightbringer, that just came out this year, this summer. I mean, but I'm reading it right now, so probably doesn't qualify for that. So the other than that, the most recent release that I picked up, which sort of screws up my read all the books you have challenge that I am a part of this year, is I found this edition of Ulysses that I wanted, and it was released, I believe, last year, and I wasn't sure if it was going to sell out, and so I wanted to get that book before it did sell out, so I'll pop a picture of it up on the screen. So that is the most recent release. Obviously, it's not a new book, but it is a new release that I haven't read, but I want to. Biggest disappointment so far. So I would say that would be The Timekeeper by Mitch Albom. That was a big fat meh in my books. It was just the manner in which that story was told. Like, there's a lot of distance between the reader and the characters, and so I just didn't feel the emotion that I was supposed to while reading that book. So that was the biggest disappointment so far this year. Biggest surprise so far. Well, I think I'm going to have to give that to Story of the Eye by George Bataille. I have a review for that. I'll link it in the description box below. I had sort of bought that book and it had been sitting on my shelf for a few months or maybe even up to a year, and I sort of forgot about what it was about until I was like, oh, I was just going to read this on my vacation. And boy, was that a surprise. So I'll definitely go with that one. Favorite new author or debut or new to you? So book that I was quite impressed with, and it was the first of her that I'd ever read, was The Lathe of Heaven by Ursula K. Le Guin. Really enjoyed it, and I liked the sort of philosophical element that she built into that story. And so I have some more Ursula K. Le Guin on my shelf, and so I'm really excited to read on and read more from her. So, newest fictional crush. Well, I'd say if I had to pick a fictional crush, I would have to go with George Orr in The Lathe of Heaven. I really liked his personality and the way he was described, and how like middle of the road and balanced and logical and compassionate he was. I really love that about his character, and oftentimes we romanticize people on the personality spectrums at each of the extremes, and I really loved how balanced and purposefully middle or on the fence he was uh, in that personality perspective. So that's who I pick. Newest favorite character. Oh, now I guess it's not a character because this is sort of a nonfiction book, but I really loved. I was sort of reading through. I'm on that Read Everything You Own challenge, and I was sort of going through my Mitch Albom section. I had picked up a bunch of his books uh, at a used bookshop because they were really well priced, and so I just picked them all up. His book, Have a Little Faith. I'm forgetting the name of the rabbi right now, but Mitch Albom's rabbi that he gets to know in his book, Have a Little Faith, where his rabbi asks him to write his eulogy. And so these two people get to know each other over the course of the years before his rabbi does finally pass. And I absolutely love the rabbi. That would be my favorite character. A book that made you cry. Have a Little Faith. Bawled like a baby. Book that made you happy. Book that made you happy. I'm gonna go with the Merry Wives of Windsor. I'm continuing on with my Shakespeare challenge, and I have to say that it's kind of, it's a humorous, it's a comedy, that play, and there's some pretty funny situations in there. So I'm going to say The Merry Wives of Windsor. The most beautiful book you have acquired this year. So I've just said that I did purchase that copy of Ulysses, which is quite pretty. So that would qualify. But I'm also, as you can tell, I'm not in my usual setup because I'm visiting a friend out of town, and I'm at her house, and we happened to go to a used bookstore in town, and I was very good. I only bought 3 books, but one of the books that I will say is one of the most beautiful books is this Frank Lloyd Wright visual encyclopedia, and it has all these beautiful photographs of all of his work in here. And I'm a big fan of Frank Lloyd Wright, and just the revolution that he made on modern architecture, or in architecture in general, and the fusion of his style, and it's very intriguing. One of the most beautiful I've picked up this year. Books you need to read before the end of the year. So I have a few books that I need to read before the end of the year. I need to work on. I'm probably going to read The Passenger and Stella Maris a few more times before the end of the year so that I can finish that review. I think that's going to take priority, even like my reading challenge, because I want to do a good job on those reviews and analyses. And then I probably want to read at least one more big beefy book before the end of the year that I would want to do a good in-depth review on, hopefully, if the urge strikes me. And I'm thinking it's probably maybe going to be Infinite Jest. Maybe Infinite Jest. Some other ones that I want to read before the end of the year that I brought with me on this trip would be Propaganda by Edward Bernays. I have taken marketing in my past, and so if you've taken anything to do with marketing, you've heard of Edward Bernays, and he gets into what he's doing, basically what marketing is, and what just about any form of communication is to some degree is propaganda to in some distinction. And so I've wanted to for years pick up his book, and so I have, and I want to read that. I have a few books that are ongoing. I'm working through Kurt Vonnegut's Complete Stories, his short story collection. I've been trying to not read too many of those short stories at once so that I can actually absorb them and have them sink in. The Aeneid, I started that at the beginning of the year and I'm struggling with the Aeneid. I tried listening to it, but then like my brain will click off and I'm no longer listening to it. It's been a struggle. So hopefully the Aeneid, I want to finish the Complete Stories by Kurt Vonnegut, although there's still a lot of that to go, so I'm not sure if I'm going to finish it by the end of the year. Yeah, Propaganda and maybe Infinite Jest, and continue with my Shakespeare reading project. So that for sure. Content creators you've been loving. I watch a lot of content that's not book related that I've been really liking, and that I do watch would be Nerd Forge. She's this really creative woman who makes a whole bunch of really cool and awesome things, and I feel like she sparks my creativity really well because I like to do handy things and build things around the house. Not that I build anything to the degree that she does, but it's sort of interesting watching other people create things makes you more creative, I find. So another channel that I stumbled across that I've been really enjoying, even though maybe I don't necessarily agree with all of his takes, which is completely to be expected, is the Canvas. He talks about art. He is was an art student himself, and I think he's a Canadian content creator as well. I really love his stuff, and he has these really intriguing ways of looking at art, and so I quite enjoy his content. Hey everybody, this is Editing Stella here to drop a few more creator channels that I really enjoy because I forgot to mention a few. One of them being the channel Dami Lee. She is also a Canadian content creator. She's an architect that does these really interesting videos about how architecture impacts how we live and interact with our surroundings and how our surroundings also impact us. And I'll link a video of hers that I really enjoyed. Another content creator is Design Theory. He is a designer professionally, and I love this channel because of the great insights into several different creative industries and into the artist's life as well, and so which is applicable across lots of different art forms. Another channel that I like is Academy of Ideas. He does a lot of content about philosophy and literature and different topics. I'm going to link a video as well that of his that sort of gives an example of his work and work that I've enjoyed in the past. Another channel that I've watched for a really long time that I've enjoyed is Nerd Writer, and he does a bunch of like video essays, very short video essays surrounding either movies or different forms of art. Lady of the Library. She is a PhD student who talks about ancient civilizations and literature. She does like really deep dives into academic historical topics, and I love her voice. She has this voice I could listen to for hours, so I love her channel. Another one is Royal Now Studios. Really interesting fusion between art and history, where this creator takes all historical findings that we have and creates portraits of historical figures of the past and reimagines them in a modern context. It's really intriguing for both the history and for the artistry that goes into creating those portraits. And then last one I'll mention here, Lessons from the Screenplay. He does some great content about story and movies, and obviously, judging by the name, is definitely about writing screenplays and about storytelling from that perspective. And I will link one of his videos that I absolutely loved, that was so well executed in many ways, in the description box below. And so if anybody is interested in any of these channels, you can check them out. But thank you to the Falcon for tagging me. And if you want to do this video, although it's kind of late, you go right ahead. I'll tell you in the next video. Bye.